Hello, something guys and gals. This is Something Guy 912. So, apart from my false dichotomies in series, I'm pretty lax on criticizing aspects of those ideologically to the right. It's ironic too, because I personally think I am more left leaning on a lot of certain politics. I even took the political compass test and found myself extremely moderate with only a very slight libertarian leftist lean on the quadrant, being almost right in the origin point. But the point I'm getting at is you'd think I'd have something to say in regards to those ideologically on the right, when, well, here's your opportunity. Now, I know this video in mine is almost 4 months old, and Anthony Fantano and the Drunken Peasants have already covered in depth the faults with it, but this PragerU video, with Ben Shapiro as their mouthpiece, is a fascinating example of how not so different the left and the right are. The title should give you a clue as to the comparison I'm making, as Ben Shapiro makes similar arguments that Benita Shapkeesian has made and would make, but doing it as an affront for his conservative lean in mind. Now, don't get me wrong, the overtly sensitive regressives on the left wanting to deplatform him are inadvertently giving him more presence than he deserves, as he's a very mundane speaker on behalf of the right. But it's a bit of poetic irony that there are some people who would be so turned off by what Anita would say, yet eat up Ben's talking points like they have tact in spite of the fact he's using the same fallacious argument that Anita is making. And what would that fallacious argument be? Well, I've already used her clip before, but keep her words in mind and see how Ben apes it for Prager's right-leaning memes.
Paradoxically, and somewhat ironically, those who most strongly believe that media is just harmless entertainment are also the ones most likely to uncritically internalize harmful media messages. In short, the more you think you cannot be affected, the more likely you are to be affected.
Imagine a group of activists so powerful that they could beam their propaganda directly into your brain. Now also imagine that they're so sophisticated they actually get you to pay them to do it.
Basically, this is his lead-in for how Hollywood is this hypothetical situation. Well, sorry, Ben. Hollywood, in terms of their politics, aren't particularly subtle or sophisticated about where they stand, which means that they can only really influence those who are already ideologically on their side. That doesn't mean that I don't care that they're trying to be ham-fisted in their point, but to say that it's completely under the tablecloth is giving the people who digest our media less credit than due.
As big as the internet has become, Hollywood, and here I'm talking specifically about television, is still king.
Well, that muddies the water, doesn't it? Because Hollywood doesn't necessarily run all the channels that television has to provide, and yet you're going to make it seem like they do by inferring an example from TV as the reason Hollywood is giving you subliminal messaging.
Not only does it reach hundreds of millions of people with its messaging, it embeds that messaging in seemingly innocuous stories. Stories that distract us from the hardships of daily life.
Oh yeah, I totally remember those TV shows that distract us from the real world, like Dirty Jobs, Auction Wars, Teen Mom, Cops, Kitchen Nightmares. I mean, obviously those aren't a look into how life can be a bitch for some people. Oh, I'm sure the message that is somehow embedded, yet you, with your infinite wisdom, can see it for what it truly is that we should be complacent with our own hardships in life by watching TV. God, I'm just getting a weird sense of deja vu with this argument. Didn't someone like 14 years ago say that if you play Grand Theft Auto, that it would influence you to go on a shooting rampage because of the content wherein?
Stories that make us feel good, compassionate, and decent.
Subjectively good, compassionate, and decent, because I guess the left's embedding of those constitutions aren't your ideal version of those terms. But I wonder, Ben, would you prefer media to tell you how much of a piece of shit you are? Because that seems to be the curve that Hollywood has been on lately, ironically enough.
We watch TV, in other words, because we like it.
Yes, I am a human being. I have the capacity to enjoy human experiences in a manner equivalent to the next human being. I am not a robot.
And just as Americans didn't think much about the carcinogens in the cigarettes they smoked for decades.
Yeah, but it wasn't like they weren't aware that there were carcinogens in the cigarettes. They took that risk, just like I take the risk of suffering diabetes from how much soda I drink. Does that mean that I'm not aware of the high sugar content of soft drinks, according to you?
Most Americans don't think much about the toxic politics in the television they watch.
Careful where you swing your adjectives, Ben, because are you the arbiter of what constitutes toxic in television? I can imagine a lot of the reality TV shows like the ones I mentioned earlier aren't doing society any favors. But hey, people watch them and enjoy them regardless of their value to human society. Do you think that the value of human society should be weighed by its entertainment?
But those who create that content do. They spin out hour after hour of slickly produced left-wing propaganda, and they give themselves awards for doing it.
Huh. So, just like how PragerU spends hour after hour on slickly produced right-wing propaganda, and then proceed to give themselves a pat on the back for defeating the villainy of the left? Just let me get a mirror for you so you know you're describing yourself in this instance. Also, doesn't make it more right for you to do it just because Hollywood is run by the left.
They applaud each other's courage, even though all their friends think exactly as they do.
Hey buddy, you got a citation for that claim?
I spoke with nearly 100 members of the Hollywood community when I wrote my book, Primetime Propaganda, and many of them openly admitted they inserted social justice messages into their shows.
So, a very small sample size of ambiguous Hollywood community members came to you, someone who has it out for social justice, telling you that they implanted social justice messages into Hollywood? How the hell do we know that they are lying? How do we know that this is all confirmation bias to fill your idea that Hollywood is capable of influencing people far more than it can? For all we know, the 100 people could have been the fucking grip for the studio, or a writer for some B-grade indie film 10 years ago, or the guy who gave the director coffee. All in all, I don't believe for a second this is possibly true, or at least to this glaring extent that Ben supposes, especially considering he said many of them claim to have inserted those messages without giving us an actual figure to testify. And even if he did, the small sample size doesn't confirm that Hollywood is riddled with it, nor does it even prove that their messages even resonate with the general populace. I mean, take it from me, but seeing the reception to Ghostbusters 2016 and The Last Jedi, two movies made by Hollywood with ham-fisted political messages, makes me think that people are more than capable of thinking for themselves rather than absorb everything like a sponge.
How they do it is both clever and effective.
No, it is not. It is ham-fisted, in your face, and naked for it to be ridiculed. Now, don't get me wrong, the ideology of the left is a bit more deceptive when it comes to making claims about racism and bigotry, rather than based on mythology from the right. But like with the two movies I just mentioned, Hollywood aren't particularly shy about where they stand on a particular issue. Also, if you supposedly know that Hollywood is infected with this social justice mentality, from outside looking in, then doesn't that mean that anyone else could see the wolf in sheep's clothing as well?
Hollywood writers, producers, directors, actors create characters we keep wanting to spend time with, then have those characters act in ways most of us would judge wrong.
So you are hating the idea of good character development now? Every good character that has ever existed has done something questionably ethical, which then brings about thought-provoking questions about the morality of the situation. Take, for example, Walter White, a disease-riddled chemistry teacher that gets himself in a life of crime to support himself and his family, only to get himself so warped in it that he becomes a shadow of who he originally was. We don't like Walter White because he creates crystal meth. It's because we root for the character to win and succeed on their own intuition in spite of the fact they are making a dangerous drug. And again, I'm reminded so much of what Anita was complaining about in regards to female characters. She absolutely loathes even the idea that a female character could be flawed in any way, and either wants them to be clean slates or just Mary Sue's in retrospect. Except in Ben's case, he's trying to make the argument that if we see a character we like do something we disagree with, that therefore makes it justifiable for us to do it, regardless of the context of it, because we just love the character so much. I wonder, just how many people try to act like renegade lawbringers when they watch the Batman movies, and if Ben's case were to be true?
Then, in effect, they ask us a question. Isn't it really okay that Rachel from Friends decided to have a baby without first marrying Ross?
What? I don't even, like, how is this in any way a leftist position, or even a position for that matter? So, the hill you want to die on is marrying out of wedlock. Okay, so here's my answer. It fucking depends. Maybe Rachel was financially stable with Ross and were having a baby before pulling the big question. Maybe Rachel and Ross were already living together when this happened. Maybe they did the whole let's raise a dog first to see if we are capable of raising a child and found out they were compatible to do so. Why do you hinge on this notion that Hollywood is plugging this idea that marrying out of wedlock is okay from a fucking TV show back in the early 90s? How do you know that those who married out of wedlock even watched said episode of said TV show? This question has so much luggage behind it that it is the SAR bomb of loaded questions.
After all, you like Ross and you like Rachel.
See what I mean? That the people who watch are just going to be like, yeah, that's okay, and then proceed to do it because they saw someone they like on TV do it. Context fucking matters, Ben, and for a bit of context, no, I never watched Friends, and yes, I do think marrying out of wedlock is okay in certain circumstances. That's all you literally have to do to make his argument moot. Find someone who married out of wedlock, who never watched that episode, and then the whole media influences culture argument falls apart in kind. It didn't work when Anita tried to make that argument, and it definitely doesn't work here.
Have you ever tried simply turning off the TV, sitting down with your children, and hitting them?
How can what they do be bad?
Hey Ben, here's another caveat. What if, in spite of every situation for them going in the right direction for marrying out of wedlock to be acceptable, that someone actually still doesn't support the idea regardless? I know, it's a tricky thing for you to think about, but imagine for a moment, say, Blade, for instance. Blade is completely justified in the movies, the hunt down and kill vampires, as a feed on society, and as he personally has a vendetta against them. But I don't therefore support the act of murder because I watch those movies. It's like when I notice the racism narrative between the Nords and Dark Elves present in Skyrim, that I don't immediately start wishing for a race war against the other race because I saw it on the TV. It's almost like people can discern reality from fantasy in a way.
It hasn't always been this way.
Oh, back in the good old days, we forced people to bear through laws inscribed in a 2,000-year-old text of desert stories and made women conceive of a baby regardless of their financial well-being. Oh, weren't those the days?
For decades, Hollywood promoted traditional American values.
Oh, there's another cross that Ben's going to nail himself to. Traditional family values. Doesn't that just sound like a bunch of fucking fluff when you compartmentalize it enough? I mean, when you think of it, it doesn't really mean anything. The traditional family values was the nuclear family cliche of mom, pop, 2 kids, and the dog. But the thing is, people aren't set in stone. My traditional family values could be me and the fucking blow-up doll, and it would mean just as much because it's my traditional family value, which means that the phrase itself is entirely subjective. What Hollywood is promoting isn't what Ben wants, and he wants to control it and to do it for his own gains because he thinks that's Hollywood is controlling people. Irony knows no ideology.
That changed, as did so much else in the late 1960s and 70s.
Yeah, sure. Let's just quickly generalize the transition of time between those 2 decades. We were in the middle of the Cold War and the Vietnam War, had the Civil Rights Movement, the start of second-wave feminism, and most notably, of marriage rights. I wonder why Ben didn't mention that. It kind of makes you think that people, through no fault of Hollywood's own, became more liberal as time went on in a way. But that goes against the argument that Hollywood controls people, of course.
When Hollywood stopped celebrating American values and started transforming them.
If the vague term could be changed in any way, then it once again didn't mean anything but what you think it should mean. Maybe people's idea of traditional American values changed, and Hollywood inferred that change through media. But again, if that were true, it would go entirely against your argument that Hollywood is controlling all our thoughts and perceptions.
For example, in the early 1970s, abortion was a hotly contested issue.
Still is today, but don't let that stop you from thinking Hollywood snuffed the topic altogether.
A year before the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court case, the top-rated TV sitcom Maude featured a storyline in which the title character of the show has an abortion.
Stop the presses, people. Maude, by Ben's own design, single-handedly made people side with the argument on abortion rights. Doesn't matter the context of the abortion, doesn't matter if those presiding in the court never even seen the show, TV has to influence us so this argument can hold water.
The LA Times described it as a watershed moment in TV history. Why? Well, because it removed the stigma of abortion.
Maybe because no other TV show would dare depict someone having an abortion unless the ideological hegemons of the right try to censor it? No! It couldn't be that, could it? It's not like history has been repeating itself or something. Also, Ben is now assuming that the LA Times can indoctrinate people into militant lefties too by this mention.
Millions of Americans, sitting in their living rooms, saw a beloved character do something they did not approve of, and they felt sympathy.
I guess Ben forgot about the sexual revolution of the 70s too, on top of flaking over other major events of that time. But again, he's putting the cart before the horse of where people's hearts were in the given time. He doesn't think any one of those millions of Americans were already privy to the idea of having abortion when necessary. He doesn't think that those who were opposed could feel sympathy but stand by their decision regardless. No, everyone is a 1 and a 0, and the media is the switch to change you to either or in his mind. Let's play that clip of Anita again to remind us of what Ben's argument hinges on.
Paradoxically, and somewhat ironically, those who most strongly believe that media is just harmless entertainment are also the ones most likely to uncritically internalize harmful media messages. In short, the more you think you cannot be affected, the more likely you are to be affected.
Something similar happened in the early 2000s. Vice President Joe Biden was right when he said that Will and Grace had a major impact on how Americans think about same-sex marriage.
Oh no, here we go again. Another TV show I never saw, yet I'm in favor of same-sex marriage. But tell me, Ben, how that TV show, in spite of me never watching it, turned me to the dark side of the topic.
Before the hit NBC show, though most Americans had a live and let live attitude toward private sexual behavior, few supported the idea of men marrying men or women marrying women.
You got the numbers for that to prove it? Do you have any trends that show those in favor of same-sex marriage magically spike up once a TV show came up? This is not even me saying that media can't influence some people, but Ben is trying to make this overarching theme that one TV show, even if literally no one watches it, is an immediate propaganda machine that can fester in your brain permanently and for life, and that you can't be convinced either way. Also, would Ben be making the same argument if a TV show that promoted traditional marriage aired and people magically were against same-sex marriage? I'd highly fucking doubt it.
But seeing the charming and funny Will Truman live his life week after week paved the way for a much wider acceptance of same-sex marriage.
Again, just claiming that without any evidence or even it being true, once again putting the cart before the horse of ideas, and once again claiming that anything present in any media will immediately make people accustomed to the notion. I guess because I watched the Twilight series, as awful as they are, now I'm interested in bestiality and necrophilia, right? Because I watched The Punisher, that means I'm going to methodically butcher my enemies in extremely ironic ways too?
Current shows like Orange is the New Black and Transparent are trying to effect the same change on the issue of transgenderism.
But Ben, neither one of those shows are fucking subtle about it. I knew right going in, those two shows were going to be littered with the usual talking points about transgender acceptance or whatnot. But oh no, because I watched them, I'm just as much indoctrinated as the loony leftist next to me, right? Hey Ben, isn't there a course in college called Gender Studies that might explain this trend towards transgenderism that I'm almost certain PragerU has covered in multiple videos that might better explain why people are emboldened by these messages to make shows such as those? Nope, that doesn't exist. There is no way that something intended to educate us on something could possibly have more influence than something we watch to make the time pass by.
You may think these are all good things.
To be frank, I do not, because most of the time, they aren't making those characters with the intention of them being interesting, but rather by involving their sex into every aspect of that character. But ultimately, I don't really care what people decide to identify themselves as, so long as they don't feel entitled about it. But that's the fucking difference, Ben. Just because I accept something as live and let live doesn't mean that I also don't have qualms with it. Just like how you can be against feminism, but not against women's rights per se. Take these things hand in hand rather than trying to mush them together like some kind of amalgam.
Or that some are and some aren't.
And that fiction is in reality, and that in certain contexts the act is acceptable in that given situation, but nuance is a fucking rare commodity these days.
That's not my point. My point is that Hollywood has had a tremendous influence on our culture, and that influence has been all to the left side of the political spectrum.
Well, he did it. He jumped the shark, dug his grave, dropped the plot, the whole fucking bag. Ben, you are now officially no fucking different to how Benita Shapkeesian interprets games and media as some kind of revolving propaganda machine, and that if you think you are outside of that propaganda machine, that is only more evident of your indoctrination, right? Sure, Ben. Let's ignore the countless Christian movies that get pumped out year by year. Let's ignore Clint Eastwood's entire catalog of movies he starred and directed in. Those couldn't possibly influence people the same way that Hollywood can. No? Here's the secret, Bren. They are part of Hollywood too! So don't try to expect me to believe that media perception comes before culture. Entertainment hinges on what the broader populace wants. And if they want to see transgender characters, then they're going to make them to get that sweet dollar bill, yo! Ultimately, Ben is upset that the right aren't the ones who get to purvey over people's desires and wants, even if his perception of how Hollywood indoctrinates people is inherently flawed.
And it isn't just social issues. Chevy Chase liked to boast that he helped Jimmy Carter defeat Gerald Ford in 1976. He may be right.
What? What was that? What does any of that have to do with Hollywood indoctrination? Ben, are you like the conspiracy theorist who is connecting the dots between Hollywood actors and their influence and saying that it must be true? Chevy Chase was paid by the globalist establishment to turn the frickin' frogs gay. And then they used their satanic power over the public to make them more accepting of gay rights through their propaganda. They think they're so clever. Hollywood did the DMT.
Week after week on Saturday Night Live, Chase portrayed Ford, probably the most athletic president in American history, as a bumbling, uncoordinated idiot.
Oh, so just like how Hollywood and SNL also portrayed Trump as those things, and that made him lose the election. Oh, wait. No, it didn't. Something nuance. Something bullshit, son! Maybe the broader populace already thought that Ford was a bumbling idiot, and that Chevy Chase played into their perception of it, no?
In the early 2000s, Comedy Central had a show, That's My Bush, that openly mocked the 43rd president.
Ben, are you fucking serious? Are you seriously going to say that Comedy Central made people think that Bush was stupid, and out of his countless bumbling moves throughout his 2 terms? Mission accomplished. We got them terrorizers, and America's free. Like, if Bush was eloquent and smart in any way, you might have an argument for this, but I highly doubt a show such as that would be able to last for very long.
And of course, Hollywood despises Donald Trump. From crime dramas to the late-night comedy shows, he's relentlessly ridiculed.
Comedy. What is comedy? A miserable little pile of secrets? It's not like I've made my own silly jokes in regards to Trump in spite of me mostly being on his side on a number of issues. Nah. And it's not like SNL have done their low blows at Obama or left-leaning presidents before, too. Is Ben upset that people on the right are held to the same standard as those on the left? Because that's what it sounds like he's implying.
Somehow, Hollywood managed to take an 8-year hiatus from mocking presidents during the Obama years.
You fucking little liar. I just searched SNL skits mocking Obama, you little snake in the grass. You didn't look for them. That's why they somehow managed to take an 8-year hiatus, you two-faced cretin.
But maybe that's just a coincidence.
Is it a coincidence that you have a fucking double standard when it comes to comedy, satire, and who gets to influence who? Maybe watching Batman all those years influenced you to become Two-Faced, perhaps?
All of this programming has an effect. Scientific studies suggest that watching TV acts like a habit-forming drug.
As is for literally any other kind of thing people get a kick off of, especially easy-to-digest media, but ultimately, this is his way of drawing a connection between the influences, like how Jack Thompson's only basis for video games causing violence is that playing them increase the aggression levels of those playing it, because God forbid you can rage at something that isn't fucking real without needing to physically exert it. How does this prove that people are going to even adopt anything they consume? Again, he keeps putting the fucking cart before the horse of ideas.
According to the market research firm Childwise, teenage boys spend 8 hours per day in front of screens, much of it consuming Hollywood propaganda.
Oh! Won't someone think of the fucking children for the umpteenth time? I haven't proved that it could affect my children in any way, but damn it! We have to force people not to make fun of anyone I agree with, because that in no way reverses the poles of propaganda in favor of my own political standing.
Dedicated religious parents might expose their children to 2 hours a week of religious instruction.
Oh, but that's not indoctrination according to you, right? They're just promoting traditional family values, like not having sex before marriage, or having sex for recreation, or not working on the Sabbath, and not wearing mixed fabrics too, because if it wasn't, I see that's a bit of hypocrisy.
Hands-on parents might spend 30 minutes a day discussing essential values with their kids.
Essential being? Look, boy, the only way to reach manhood as per the eternal tradition is to blow me. This is also totally not gay at all, I promise.
Hollywood gets up to 40 hours a week.
Ben, you don't give a shit about how much time Hollywood takes of a given kid's time. You only care if they pander to you. Remember, you said that Hollywood used to support your politics at the time. It didn't matter to you if they were using the same tricks that the left are using. It's okay for you to rigidly enforce your values, but not for anyone else, and I say, get fucked, you ideologically dogmatic lunatic.
By all means, enjoy television.
I could see the Onion headline now. Ben Shapiro takes a break from conservatism to enjoy TV shows for a half hour.
I do. But remember, the people making TV don't merely want to entertain you. They want to influence you.
This is as much as a crocked up conspiracy as those who claim that the damn Jews run Hollywood. They, with triple parentheses, are going to teach your kids the value of fucking your dog in the ass and are pretending to be a gender you are because they want you to be complacent to it, to the point that you don't even know you are being influenced by it. You gotta remove the shackles from your mind, man.
They want you to think like they think.
And this video in no way wants me to think the way you think, right? Your diatribe about the left's propaganda machine is insightful learning. It wasn't like you were trying to show your fucking book that goes into this topic conveniently enough.
And unless you're aware of what they're trying to do, chances are you will.
You gotta be paranoid, man. Gotta open your third eye and see the propaganda for what it is, man. Release the chakrams of Hollywood's tainted ideals and be a free-thinking man. Except only if you think like we do, because that isn't jumping out of one burning pot and into another one, right? Well, that was fucking garbage, Ben. Not realizing that if the roles were reversed, you get your Ben Shapiro equivalent of the left complaining that Duck Dynasty influences people somehow to be more conservative through its subtle means. I guess I should call you by your true nomenclature, Benita Shapkeesian, because as I already demonstrated in that clip, his entire argument has to rely on turning people into lemmings who can't think for themselves, nor discern fiction from reality, or even have a joke at their expense even. The countless times he put the cart before the horse of ideas, trying to assume that people thought this way because of the media, and not that the media regurgitated what the people already thought. It's shit like this that made me glad that in the spur of 2016, I dropped the whole notion of adopting ideologies altogether, because ultimately, they have the same goals in mind, but have different means to pursue. Tune in next time.
I feel like this is the opposite side of the same coin that we see Benita Shapkeesian flipping when she does her feminist frequency videos talking about video games and reinforcing and making people sexist and influencing people to be sexist and... It's most likely that Ben would see Anita's videos, toss them aside, ignore them, and act like there's no validity to what she's saying. Meanwhile, he'll make the same exact argument, but he'll flip it and turn it into, television is making people think it's okay to marry other people if they're the same gender.